Hi, Colin here, finishing off the bit I started before. As I explained, YouTube had cut me down to size a bit, so it's a bit more disjointed than usual. Belisarius eventually was withdrawn back to Constantinople, where his skills at military tactics were found to not transfer to court intrigues. He was arrested for plotting against the emperor and his fortune confiscated. His wife intervened on his behalf via her friendship with the empress, and he received a partial pardon and some of his cash back. According to Procopius, he was pathetically abject in accepting this remission, though exactly how he could do otherwise in the circumstances of a despotic emperor, I'm not sure. But the last years of the great military tactician were not totally pathetic. There is a lot to be said for being the possessor of unique skills and in-demand skills. So when a group of Bulgarians managed to overcome the empire's defences and threaten the capital, there was only one man to call for. There were not many troops on hand, but working with inadequate resources was what Belisarius did best. He used guile to lure the attackers into a trap and wipe them out. It was a small-scale victory, but a victory nonetheless, and it's quite likely that had Justinian died first, Belisarius would have become the next emperor. That would have made a big difference to how he came to be remembered, but as it is, he's a rather pitiful figure. His talents were never truly rewarded by his ungrateful master. There's no truth in the medieval story that he ended his life blind and begging in the streets of Rome, but he was nonetheless treated pretty shabbily. But his reputation did survive, and in Gibbon's time he was counted as one of the great generals of history. He's done less well subsequently and is no longer a household name. History continues to get bigger and our brains remain much the same size, so the heroes of ancient history have more competition for our memories. Only Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great remain from the classical period as fighting men you can assume everyone has heard of. I think Caesar's reputation is safe enough, but as we all become more multicultural, I wonder if Alexander will last much longer. But it's a shame that Belisarius is not better known. He was a man of his age, and his age was one that was dominated by a despotic emperor whose hands held nearly all the power, and the emperor in question was one who was himself a remarkable leader and exceptional human being in many ways. To shine at all next to so bright a star takes something special, and the exploits of Belisarius in increasing the size of the empire by around 50% has very few parallels. That these achievements would ultimately come to nothing is not something for which he can be blamed. It might be thought that he would have taken the opportunity to seize control of Italy for himself when its throne was offered to him, but loyalty is a great quality in a general. For me, putting his personal ambition to one side in the interest of the state was his greatest victory. In politics, virtue is rarely rewarded, and Belisarius certainly wasn't rewarded for his, but he remains the great ornament of the age in which he lived. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and apologies that it was split in two, and can join me for the next one. If you've been listening to recent ones, you'll know that I'm going back through all my comments that I've got on my YouTube account. This time I'm reaching back to 2012, when Utility Maximizer said that he started listening to this podcast about midway through listening to the History of Rome podcast and found that they went well together. Quote, "He has his own unique appealing style and that wonderful English dry wit." Thanks for those kind words, and good luck with maximising your utility. It must be well on the way by now. A few days later, Denrock was very enthusiastic. "I can hardly wait for the next podcast. I often re-listen to them. Colin the Man Sanders does a great job. The man just oozes intellect." Well, sadly, since then it's been more of a case of a little intellect gradually seeping out from time to time rather than oozing, so my apologies, but thanks for the kind words. I've covered most of this chapter in this episode, but I have a small but perfectly formed follow-up to the rest of it coming out next time when we look at the death of Justinian and sum up the rest of his reign. I hope you can join me for that, and in the meantime, thanks for listening.